Did this just light the fuse on the Great Reset? Today we're going to talk about what that fuse is, why this could be the black swan event that triggers a great financial reset, and why we're on the cusp of a financial reset to begin with. Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share, and restack buttons. What is this fuse I'm talking about? What is this black swan event that could tip the world into an economic collapse? Well, believe it or not, it's the California wildfires. They are more than just a horrific natural disaster or personal devastation that's being realized. We're going to talk about why this could tip the world into an economic financial crisis. Now, in and of itself, these fires would not do that. As devastating as they are, we see natural disasters occur all the time. We're going to talk today about why this one is a little bit different, and of course, why we're already teetering on the brink of financial chaos already, of global depression, of a financial crisis, the likes of which we've never seen before. All we need is a little nudge to push the world over the edge. And what we're seeing in California right now could be that nudge. So let's take a look at this right here. This is from AccuWeather. It says AccuWeather estimates more than $250 billion in damages and economic loss from Los Angeles wildfires. To put the magnitude of loss into context, this latest damage and economic loss estimate surpasses the numbers for the entire 2020 wildfire season. Of course, this is an ongoing issue. It says as fires continue to rage across Southern California and the scope of catastrophic damage, loss of life, business disruptions, and other economic impacts becomes clearer, AccuWeather has updated and increased its preliminary estimate of the total damage and economic loss between $250 and $275 billion. Quote, these fast-moving, wind-driven infernos have created one of the costliest wildfire disasters in modern U.S. history, AccuWeather chief meteorologist Jonathan Porter said. Hurricane-force winds sent flames ripping through neighborhoods filled with multi-million-dollar homes. The devastation left behind is heartbreaking, and the economic toll is staggering. The worst of the fires are burning in an area from Santa Monica to Malibu, impacting some of the most expensive real estate in the country, with median home values over $2 million. Should a large number of additional structures be burned in the coming days, it may become the worst wildfire in modern California history based on the number of structures burned and economic loss, Porter added. Tragically, lives have been changed forever in just a matter of minutes. Many families may not be able to afford to rebuild or repair and return. Businesses may not be able to recover and jobs will be permanently lost. Keep in mind, guys, some homes were uninsured. We've had insurance companies pull out of California in recent years due to the threat of wildfires. So many people, they really didn't have an option. They found the insurance unaffordable to buy. And so many people, unfortunately, are going to be have a complete economic loss as a result of this. Thankfully, any of those people survived this. But this is going to be extremely disruptive. And the rebuild and return process with California regulations and the bureaucracies that take place there, some of these homes will probably never be rebuilt. And not just homes, but whole neighborhoods, whole communities. Thousands of people are in desperate need of help. Initially, the basic and life-sustaining needs of food, water, and shelter as this tragedy unfolds, Porter said. Many families will face significant unexpected costs to relocate to another area in Southern California. The recovery process will be extremely expensive and emotionally challenging in the months and years to come. This update accounts for new and additional information, including the damage and destruction of thousands of homes and businesses, damage to utilities and infrastructure, the financial impact of evacuation orders, the long-term cost of rebuilding or relocation for people in densely populated areas whose homes were destroyed, anticipated cleanup and recovery cost, emergency shelter expenses, as well as immediate and long-term healthcare costs for people who were injured or exposed to unhealthy air quality from wildfire smoke. AccuWeather's estimate also accounts for lost wages and housing displacement for thousands of people across Southern California whose jobs have been temporarily impacted, which may ultimately result in large numbers of furloughs, layoffs, or businesses shutting down and jobs being eliminated. We're going to talk more about that in just a moment. But guys, this is devastating, not just in its direct impact, but there are second and third order effects to this that we'll look at that are just going to make the problem reverberate across not just the local economy, but the global economy. And before I hear, well, no, this isn't bad from an economic standpoint, nobody's arguing that it isn't bad from a personal tragedy standpoint. This is terrible. We should be praying for everyone who is in the midst of dealing with this. Because I often hear when there's natural disasters like this doesn't have the economic impact they state, because look at all of the economic activity that will take place to rebuild. And that's just a fallacy that we're going to look at in just a second here. But think about, yes, there are some companies, some contractors that will benefit economically from the rebuild that takes place. But let's take a look at this right here. This has been talked about by economists for probably a couple of centuries at this point. It's called the broken window fallacy. It says, classic story, a boy throws a ball through the window of a shop. Therefore, the shopkeeper hires a glazer to fix the broken window. Noting the highly visible employment of the glazer, some argue that the broken window is a good thing. This is wrong. It ignores the secondary effects. If the shopkeeper had not spent the funds fixing the window, he would have spent them on other things. Employment in these areas of production would have been larger, and the community would have had both the window and the items purchased by the shopkeeper. Once the secondary effects are considered, it's clear that destructive actions such as those resulting from floods, hurricanes, and destructive public policy harm a society and fail to expand net employment. Guys, if it was true that it was a net gain for the economy to have disasters when we had a recession, people would just burn things down, tear things up, rip things down so they could be rebuilt. That is not the path to economic prosperity, and we're going to see major impacts as a result of this fire. Let's take a look here as well. This is from Cal Matters. It says, LA fires could drastically drive up insurance premiums, which I would note have already been elevated significantly in California, and test California's new market rules. It says the deadly and destructive fires in Los Angeles, which some say could be the costliest in the state's history, I think this is almost a week old at this point, so they are by far, will further strain the insurance market and worsen the financial position of California's insurer of last resort. Data about Pacific Palisades, the devastated LA neighborhood whose residents include movie stars and directors, help illustrate the insurance problems plaguing the state. An estimated 1 in 5 homes in the upscale neighborhood were covered by the insurer known as the FAIR Plan. Property owners in California have increasingly been turning to the plan, a pool of insurers required by state law to sell fire policies to consumers who can't find regular insurance elsewhere. That's because for the past few years, insurance companies have been canceling policies or refusing to write new ones in California, citing rising risk of wildfires. As a result, the FAIR Plan's number of homeowner policies grew to more than 451,000 as of September, an increase of 123% over the past 3 years. Last year, State Farm decided not to renew tens of thousands of policies in the state, including about 1,600 in Pacific Palisades. As of September, there were 1,430 residential fair plan policies in the zip code, an increase of 85% from the previous year. So we've already seen problems with insurers leaving California prior to the outbreak of these most recent fires. And guys, this is going to create issues, with the insurers themselves, because potentially some of these insurers could go bankrupt. Typically, when that happens in a state, if let's say you have life insurance and the end of your life comes, but the insurance company has gone bankrupt, there are plans in place for the state to take care of that. They make the different insurance companies pay premiums. In this case, California has multiple insurers pooling together to offer these policies. This is going to be a drain on resources on those companies, as well as potentially the state of California, which already has budgetary concerns. But ultimately, this is going to have a big impact on the ability to insure homes in these areas where wildfires are a threat, and the ability to rebuild and get insurance on these homes. It's going to be a big problem, and it's going to price a lot of people out of the market altogether. They're going to have to move as we see insurance premiums skyrocket in California. And when people are forced to sell all at once, well, that's going to put a strain on prices. That puts a strain on that. We've seen the ripple effects of what that does from the great financial crisis, because there's so many impacts as a result of these fires. Again, billions of dollars have to be paid out by these insurance companies. When they collect premiums on a regular basis, they don't just sit those over in a corner to pay out. They invest those into different financial instruments and securities. So they have bonds, maybe some stocks, all sorts of investments that have to be sold in order to raise the cash to be paid out. So that's going to put a strain on what we've noted is already the most overvalued stock market in U.S. history, as well as a bond market that's been plagued with problems for several years now when the bond bubble burst as a result of rising interest rates. And we see interest rates continuing to rise. This sell-off, this forced sell-off, isn't going to make those rates come down. That has major impacts on the entire economy. And so we're going to see major impacts financially as a result of these wildfires. Take, for instance, just Los Angeles itself. Los Angeles is the second largest city in the United States behind New York in terms of population, but also in terms of economic activity, economic power. And so this is a direct hit to one of the economic centers of the United States at a time where we're, based on the yield curve, we're most likely already in a severe recession. We already know that there is a depression in China, one unfolding in Germany, and probably one unfolding in Japan as well. So none of this helps, but Los Angeles County itself, think of what this means for, well, the municipal finances alone. This tax revenue generated by all of these neighborhoods now disappears from their budget. What happens to the employees that service a lot of these areas? We're going to see layoffs of those employees as this blows a big hole in the budget of Los Angeles. And then what about Los Angeles and its ability to pay down its debt? So Los Angeles has a $47 billion annual operating budget, but they have $54 billion in debt. What happens to those bonds as they get sold off, and the bondholders that are holding on to those? Guys, what can't be paid back won't be paid back. What impact does this have on California's budget and its state finances and its credit rating? This is going to ripple through the entire economy. What does this mean for disruptions to businesses as Maybe businesses that have survived this, their employees, their homes did not, and they simply move away and walk away from those businesses. What happens? This is that we can't begin to understand the complete impact of what these fires are having. But again, the fire in and of itself is bad, but it would normally not cause a severe economic crippling event. But as we've noted, we've been standing on the brink, teetering on the brink of financial collapse for a couple of years now. And we have these spiking interest rates. We have the U.S. banking system sitting on over $500 billion in unrealized losses. Now we have this disaster coming on the heels of the Hurricane Helene disaster. What is going to happen next? We already see China, again, in the midst of a deflationary spiral. They're experiencing massive bankruptcies, $18 trillion in lost real estate values in the last 3 years. We see Germany falling into depression, the EU going into recession, almost every country in the EU. We see Japan on the brink of a currency crisis. Again, all we need is a little nudge to push us over that cliff. As we've noted back in August, how the current global financial crisis leads to biblical tyranny in 10 steps. And we just noted Japan can choose one of two roads. They can raise interest rates and destroy their domestic economy, or lower interest rates and destroy their domestic economy. We're at the end of the road for the Japanese monetary experiment of the last at least 35 years. This is not going to end well. This will have massive implications for the global economy. We would see continued volatility. We said at that time, debt will hit its limit. This just causes more issues. We're going to see bank runs. We're going to see massive government and central bank responses to all of these problems. A bank bail-in is coming. We didn't talk about this extensively, but back in October, there was a small bank in Oklahoma that failed, and the proper Dodd-Frank post-Great Financial Crisis laws were actually implemented rather than ignored, and uninsured depositors were used to bail in the bank. It's a small amount, relatively speaking, about $5 million. But guys, that's what the law says. If you have $250,000, up to $250,000 in the bank, FDIC insurance will cover that. But above that, if you had, say, $1 million in the bank and it failed, well, you get $250,000 back from the FDIC, and $750,000 of that would be used to help bail out the bank. They call it a bail-in, not a bailout, but it would go to the bank, and you would receive, well, a little piece of paper that says you're a part owner in that bank, right? A now worthless bank. So that ownership interest would be worth a whole lot less than $750,000. And before you say, well, I don't have $1 million in the bank, maybe not. But the business you work for, or the business that your son or daughter works for, or your neighbor works for, most likely does. And so we saw a small bank bail-in back in October. What happens when we see a much larger bank get bailed in? Well, I think they would immediately move to guarantee all the deposits across the banking system, because it would cause a massive run on banks. Something big would blow up in the economy, and we end up with a bank holiday, as we've talked before. So we need to be preparing for this. Article yesterday on Substack, we talked about this, how to prepare for the Great Reset, what we're doing to prepare for that. But again, you need to make sure that you have a deep pantry, because this is going to be not a long-lasting event when it takes place, but it will be a very memorable one. It will cause a lot of panic for people for a short period of time as that happens. And then ultimately, why does this matter to Bible prophecy? Because when this system collapses, they will roll out the new system. What is the new system they've been telling us? Well, it's central bank digital currencies. They've been testing those all over the world, countries all over the world. Tokenized assets. They're going to put everything on the blockchain that they can possibly put on the blockchain. And digital IDs so that they can say, well, we have to prove you're you in order to gain access to these assets. But guys, once they implement these three things, once we have central bank digital currency, tokenized assets, digital IDs, we are effectively in what would be indistinguishable from the mark of the beast system in terms of its capability and in terms of your freedom and liberty. And no doubt about it, they then moved to make that new system mandatory. They're already all around the world, countries all around the world have engaged in a war on cash. And they claim, well, it's because these criminals, only criminals use cash, only drug dealers use cash. So we need to eliminate the use of cash. We need to have small denomination bills, and we need to outlaw transactions in cash over a certain amount. And they do all of this little by little by little until you wake up one day and cash is outlawed. And then the whole world is in this mark of the beast system. We're seeing it constructed right now. We're seeing the infrastructure being put in place for this. Again, the mark of the beast system will roll out during the 7-year tribulation. Not now. We are not in the tribulation right now. There's no need to fear any of this. We're just observing this. And it just helps to underscore the amazing accuracy of the Bible. It's 100% accurate in its prophecies of what it foretold hundreds, thousands of years in advance. And guys, it's telling us what we're seeing today tells us we are nearing that mark of the beast system in the tribulation. But in the meantime, it's being constructed right before our eyes. We're seeing a system come into place, a system being built that has the exact same functional capability as the mark of the beast system. The ability to cut people off from buy-sell transactions, the ability to control every aspect of your life. They can program that currency to only work in certain instances or on certain items, certain services. Guys, this is an assault on freedom and liberty, and it's setting the stage for the end times as the Bible foretold, as the book of Revelation foretold this mark of the beast system almost 2,000 years ago. So guys, this is an indication of the times in which we live and how close we are to the second coming of Jesus Christ at the end of that tribulation. The Bible tells us the rapture of the church will occur before then, so that's even closer. But guys, what does all this mean? We're heading toward this great financial reset one way or another. And it very well could be that the horrific California wildfires that we've seen over the past 2 weeks it is the tipping point, the nudge that pushes the U.S. economy over the cliff. We've already talked about China. China is in the grips. They are not getting out of this deflationary spiral anytime soon. The rest of the world is following. We have China at number 2, Germany at number 3, and the United States at number 1 as global economies. The impact of all three of those economies being in a depression simultaneously brings the entire world into depression. So we're getting closer and closer to seeing this financial crisis unfold and a new monetary system being rolled out. So let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. And God willing, I will see you next time.